Hi, Photo Fonz here, and today I'd like to share with you some of the secrets for taking beautiful, romantic portraits. I've been photographing people in love for most of my life, such as on weddings and engagement portraits, and my favorite portrait session is what I call the engagement love story portrait session. I believe this session is more of a story than a single portrait. It's actually the story of two people in love, and it requires certain ingredients for it to be successful. And by putting all these ingredients together, we end up with a beautiful, romantic love story that the couple will cherish their entire life together. And we end up putting many of these portraits into a folio, album, slideshow, or frame wall portraits. So let's talk about these ingredients. Well, first off, having the right equipment, of course, is very important in doing the best job that you can do. But there are some pieces of equipment that are more important than others. So let's talk about that. And to me, I think having the right camera body is not really as important as the lens. As long as the camera body that you have is adequate or heavy duty enough to get the job done. But my favorite lens for the engagement love story portrait is Nikon's Nikkor 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8 lens. It's a VR lens. Why is this lens so great? Well, there are several reasons. One of them is it's a fast lens and it allows me to shoot wide open at 2.8. Why shoot wide open? Well, because it gives me such a beautiful perspective when you're zoomed full at 200 millimeter. It's such a gorgeous effect. And here's where selective focus comes into play. Notice when you focus on the couple that the background goes out of focus. And this brings our attention to the couple and making the background less of a distraction, and it's more of an important part of our composition by using the limited depth of field to our advantage. One important factor to keep in mind, though, is when shooting wide open or close to it, even 3.2, 3.5, is that there is very little depth of field, and proper focusing now is very important. Otherwise, you're going to risk ending up with an out of focus image. And I generally set my focus on the eyes. On this image here, I'm focused on the eyes, and here I'm set to a full zoom. 200 millimeter on my 70 to 200 millimeter lens, and I'm set here at f3.2, and I usually like that range. I'll try to shoot around 3.2, sometimes wide open at 2.8 on close-ups. And notice how it's just a beautiful effect that the background just goes way out of focus, so your attention goes more to your subject that you're photographing. So it's just really not so confusing when you look at the image. Your eyes go all over the place, but by having that selective focus, your focus goes right to the attention of the people that you're photographing. And notice here on this next image, I photographed this full length. It's still at 3.2. However, the zoom here was just about half. It was set to a little over 100 millimeters on my zoom lens, so it's set to about half. And the background is just slightly out of focus. And look what happens if we change our zoom to full zoom at 200 millimeter. And of course, we're still focused on the couple and try to focus on the eyes. How the background just softly goes out of focus. And it just makes such a big difference that your attention goes right to them again instead of the background. The background is still out of focus, but it's not so distracting as to take your eyes off the subject. Another reason I like this lens so much is that it's a VR lens. VR is vibration reduction, and it works great on this lens. So what this means is that now you can shoot handheld at slower speeds and still get sharp images than you can with a lens that does not have VR. And you should be able to take sharp images at a 30th of a second with full zoom if you're careful. I know some photographers who are shooting at a 15th of a second and get great results. On the other end of the scale is a wide-angle lens, and I occasionally use the Sigma. It's a 15 millimeter f2.8 lens, and this is a fixed lens, not a zoom. And I usually have this on another camera body so that I don't have to change lenses. I try to avoid changing lenses so I don't have any risk of getting dust on my sensor. So I just grab this at the camera body and maybe take a few photographs using this lens. And this also adds to the variety of the portrait session, and it's great for adding some impact to the whole session. Especially nice when you're shooting around architecture and even outdoors, like around trees, like you see here. On this image here, I put the couple in the center using this lens. It just looks like the trees just sort of bow into them. So it's really a neat dramatic effect. I think it's nice not to overuse this lens so much, but just make it almost like a cherry on top of your dessert, just adding a little bit of spice and variety to the portrait session. And the other lens I use occasionally on portraits, not so much the engagement portrait, but I'll use it for kids and for weddings, because you're easily able to get in and out. And that is the Nikon's 18 to 200 millimeter VR lens. But the only objection I have with this lens is that it's not as fast as a 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8 lens. But still, 18 to 200 is a large range to be in, and it covers most shooting situations. The aperture on this lens is 3.5 at its widest setting and 5.6 at full zoom. And this lens also has VR. Plus, it's a lot smaller and easier to work with. It's just not as fast as the 70 to 200. When this lens first came out, it was extremely hard to get and sold at a hefty price. Some photographers claimed that if they could only have one lens, this would be it. It's great for travel, and you don't have to take along a big arsenal of lenses, one camera body, and this lens, and you're all set. And you may not even need a camera bag when you're traveling. But for me, on an engagement love story portrait session, my favorite lens is still the 70 to 200. I just love all the neat romantic images I can get with it, shooting wide open and then shooting at maximum zoom. It's just a beautiful effect.